You probably know that African Americans were forced to attend segregated schools. But did you know that public schools also denied access to Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Mexican Americans? Public schools in California barred Chinese American students from attending until 1885. The federal government forced Native Americans to attend segregated boarding schools well into the 20th century. These schools were designed to assimilate Native Americans into Anglo culture and society. California and Texas segregated Mexican American students into inferior schools. Schools for Mexican American children were designed to Americanize them. In these segregated schools, children were punished for speaking Spanish, and girls were taught home economics so that they could work as maids in the homes of Anglos. In the 1930s and 1940s, Mexican Americans in Texas and California fought back against these separate and inferior schools. In Texas, the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC, led the protests. The first case brought by LULAC was Salvatierra versus the Del Rio Independent School District in 1930. LULAC lost that case as the court decided that segregation was justified. It was not until 1947 that a federal circuit court in California ruled in Mendez versus Westminster that the segregation of children of Mexican descent was unconstitutional. This case began after Gonzalo Mendez, a Mexican American, and his Puerto Rican wife, Felicitas, tried to enroll their 3 children in the 17th Street Elementary School in 1944. The school told them that they were only enrolling Anglos and turned the Mendez children away. Gonzalo Mendez complained to the school board, but these complaints fell on deaf ears. In 1945, he and 5,000 other people filed suit against several Orange County school districts. In 1947, the circuit court ruled that segregation based on Spanish surname was unconstitutional. The Mendez case was an important forerunner to the landmark 1954 Supreme Court decision in the case of Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education was a compilation of 4 separate cases from 4 different towns. It involved 2 rural communities, Clarendon County, South Carolina, and Prince Edward County, Virginia, and 2 urban districts, Topeka, Kansas, and Wilmington, Delaware. African Americans in each of these communities argued that the schooling their children received in segregated schools was inferior to the schooling white children received. These families took their complaints to court and won their case. In 1954, the Supreme Court decided that state laws establishing separate public schools for Black and white students were unconstitutional. The rulings in Mendez versus Westminster and Brown versus Board of Education were only the beginning of a long process of school desegregation. One of the counties involved in the Brown case, Prince Edward County, responded to the court decision by closing all of its public schools. The white leaders of this county were so opposed to integration that they preferred to shut down the entire school district. Their school stayed closed for 5 years until a Supreme Court decision forced the county to reopen public schools. Today, educational institutions are no longer allowed to prevent children from attending based on their race. Nevertheless, segregation persists. In 2014, 1 in 5 white students attended a school where more than 90% of students were also white. 1 in 6 Black students attended a school where more than 90% of students were Black. And 1 in 6 Latinx students attended a school that was more than 90% Latinx. We have yet to fully overcome the legacy of racial segregation in the United States.